Welcome back to the channel. One of the easiest places, or I might say the most simple and effective place to start when riders find that their horse is not continuing to make progress in a fitness journey, or maybe from the start has not really, it seems like the body is not absorbing the exercise, it's not getting stronger, it's not getting more aerobically fit, it's not improving. One of the first places to assess is whether or not you're using a continuous style of exercise versus an interval style of exercise. And we will define these more clearly in a second. The reason this matters is even if the exercise that you're doing is great, the horse's unique physiology will dictate whether or not it absorbs that exercise. And I like to say there's a big difference between a horse just tolerating or getting through exercise versus making adaptations from that exercise. So it's very possible for them to kind of go through the motions day after day, but not receive those physiological changes deep within that we need and that we're looking for. And this is really dictated on, as I said, on their unique physiology, in addition to their age, breed type, genetics, all those things. So let's flesh this out a little bit more. And maybe in your own training, you can kind of pause and take stock of whether or not you are currently using a continuous versus an interval style of training. And answering that question may help you get clearer on what might work the best for your horse. Sometimes it's a blend of these two, but to flesh things out a bit, continuous style exercise is what most of us who ride predominantly in an arena or even trail riders, unless you are doing structured workouts out on the trail, such as hill repeats or fartleks or gallop sets, that kind of thing. If you're having a nice casual ride down the trail with your riding buddies, this would be defined as continuous exercise. Continuous exercise, if to make a human parallel, if you've ever gone to the gym and done a class, like maybe an aerobics class or a step class or a spin class, a cycling class, it's where you maintain a moderate, usually a moderate, something that's sustainable level of exertion from start to finish. You might have a couple quick breaks in there to grab a sip of water, pick up your towel, that sort of thing, 10 to 30-second breaks, but generally not longer than that. Pretty much, you're in the work effort. It's not anaerobic, it's not like super taxing. It is something that should be sustainable. So most arena riders, we kind of get the horse out, we sort of put them through our paces. We have a plan for that day, and there's not a lot of sustained, standing around, hopefully, or there's generally not these spikes of super high intensity followed by these prolonged breaks. So continuous exercise is something that's sort of a moderate effort. You maintain that activity level over the duration of your daily session. As I said, most trail riding, a lot of groundwork where you're kind of moving from one task to the other would also fall into this category. Interval style training, on the other hand, most typically we refer to intervals in a high intensity setting. Now, to be clear, intervals do not need, they don't have to be high intensity. Any structured bout of workout that is followed strategically by a rest period that complements that work effort and repeated in a cycle can be an interval style. So we'll clarify in a second here when intervals would be used not in a high intensity way. But most of us, when we use the word interval, we are talking about a high intensity stimulus because that is the interval style training is so valuable for adding fitness gains to horses that already have a good existing level of fitness. I call it sharpening the spear. It's also good for building bone, improving neuromuscular signals, as well as improving the circulatory system that fuels, nourishes, and clears out waste from the working muscles. I have blog posts if you want to read more about the benefits of higher intensity work. That's on my website at jackballou.com. So I won't spend a lot of time on it here, but there is really value in terms of keeping the horse's structure very resilient as well as fit for exercise. But from a general health standpoint, intervals are wonderful. Now, the most common way to use intervals, as I said, it's a short bout of exercise, typically in the range of, for horses, we're talking about work efforts that are just a couple of minutes at a time. I just wrote a book, 33 Strength and Fitness Workouts for Horses. There's a really common interval workout in there, sort of an intro style workout for people to get comfy with intervals. And it's 1 minute of hard effort, like galloping or really trotting as fast as you can, or traipsing up a hill. So 1 minute of hard effort followed by that same duration of time where the horse is rested completely. And you would repeat that cycle the number of times that's appropriate for your horse's fitness. And that's all spelled out in the book. So again, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but to give you kind of an example on the structure. Now you can have shorter intervals, shorter than 1 minute. Generally, the shorter the interval, the higher the intensity, the more anaerobic you're trying to get the horse, and then the longer the rest period. A common way to use intervals is the work and rest set periods are the same duration, but as you dial intensity up, if you choose to do that, the rest interval becomes longer. Going the other way, if the intervals are more moderate or less effort, the rest interval would be a bit longer. But anyway, the idea is you're not just maintaining activity constantly throughout your session as you would in the way of a. I gave the example of how most of us ride in the arena or traipse down the trail. So interval style workouts really are these structured doses of exercise punctuated by a rest. Now, there are, as I said, intervals can benefit all kinds of horses wherever they are in their journey, but there are two categories of horses that I think benefit primarily from interval style workout as opposed to continuous exercise. First is the entirely unconditioned horse, so horses that have had a long period of time off. 3, 4, 5, 6 or more months off, whether that's been from an injury or, life happens, you get busy, the horse is standing around for a long time. And if you've ever followed a vet prescribed rehab protocol, you would be familiar with this gradually bringing the horse back into a level of fitness. Now, this is an example of using intervals not in a high intensity way. These would be very low intensity doses of exercise because the horse does not have an underlying um, adaptation yet for the exercise hormones, the aerobic enzymes, the circulation that we need to sustain hard efforts and or continuous style exercise. So that is the reason for doing these low intensity but interval style reintroducing the horse to exercise. So maybe you've seen your vet say, you're going to trot the horse for 2 minutes and then you're going to let them take a little break and then you're going to repeat that X number of times on week number 2 or 3 of your conditioning plan. And then the following week, you're going to add a minute or two of trotting to those work sets. So if you've been through that kind of program, you're familiar with this low intensity but interval style workout for the unconditioned horse, as I said, because it would not be sustainable for them to do a continuous style of exercise, even though many of us sort of impatiently hop back into that. Now, the second classification of horses that really benefit from interval style training is, as I already touched on this before, but horses that have an existing level of fitness and you are adding gains. You're purposely based on your discipline and the horse's fitness and age. You are choosing an interval style of workout once every week or 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, generally not more than that. You would have a structured workout day. And as I say, the reasons for doing this are to really get the horse in those higher intensity exercise zones that lead to increased physiological gains. And if you're interested to read more on that, I do have a blog post, especially on the higher heart rate zones and the need for that with arena horses. And that is on my blog, jackbaloo.com. You can read it there. The subclassification here is horses that have a lot of fast twitch, a higher percentage of fast twitch fibers, especially in the hindquarter muscle. Now, interestingly, a lot of our cold-blooded breeds, even though they might have like a cooler, calmer temperament, and we might think that they are kind of have, the slower twitch fibers, in reality, many of our quarter horses, halflingers, Friesians, some of the other drafty breeds have a high percentage of fast twitch fibers, particularly in the hindquarter muscle. Now, what makes this interesting is what that means is fast twitch fibers can only respond to exercise that activates them. So we need to choose exercises that activate those fast twitch fibers. You don't have to do this every day, but you do need to make sure this is in your weekly plan. Otherwise, with these horses, if you just follow a continuous style of exercise, you run the risk of never really strengthening those fast twitch fibers. And so, what would happen, and let's say you have one of those types of horses, you're trying to do dressage and they are never getting stronger for the collection because those horses really need to flex and fire those hindquarter muscles in almost an isometric muscle contraction to keep the pelvis tucked. If we haven't strengthened them through exercises that make those muscles stronger with these higher percentage fast twitch horses, the horse will always struggle with that. We're not going to make those muscles stronger by doing more exercise that doesn't activate them. So again, this is a subclassification of horse I think can really benefit from interval style workouts. Now, not every day, certainly, but as I said, every week or 10 days, whatever works in your schedule. And again, if you're looking for a sample of interval style workouts, because they don't need to be super long, they just need to be structured well. I do have a ton of examples in my new book, 33 Strength and Fitness Workouts for Horses. The last thing to consider, I spent a lot of time talking about, the physical benefit of a continuous style of training versus an interval style of training. And a lot of this is dictated on what our background as riders is. I think, just to make some broad stereotypes, I think a lot of us from the English background are kind of used to getting in the arena, for example, and, going about our job and doing the task and then being done. Whereas when I first started to observe the Western world many, many years ago, I realized they would sort of do a task or teach their horses skill and then kind of take a time out, take a little pause, give the horse a moment to literally just stand there. And that was a bit foreign to me, to be honest. So there is a physical benefit to each horse to really choose the style of exercise that benefits them. And your horse might be somewhere in the middle and you need to blend these two styles together over the course of a week. There's also the mental and emotional consideration. There are some breeds or, just individual horses within a breed that, for example, don't respond well to an interval style workout. It may be like that predictable cycle of an exercise or a task can cause them anxiety, can cause them to get very high and amped with their energy. You may not want that. Or it could cause them to tune out and get bored if there's too much drilling of a continuous style exercise program, for example. So there's that piece too, is to take stock. And just because you've always done, or maybe let's say you've done something for a long time and it has seemed to work and you enjoy it, there is always room and to change and to acknowledge that you and the horse, year by year by year, you are in a different place and things do change. And sometimes it's worth tinkering a little bit with whether you're favoring a continuous style of workout versus an interval style of workout. And to be honest, there are wonderful changes to be made in a horse's fitness just by making these small tweaks and not making it more complicated than that. So I just wanted to leave you with a helpful video. And like I say, if you're interested in checking out the new book with interval style workouts, head on over to my website at jackbaloo.com. And I hope to catch you in a future video.